Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of the series of Keylontic Science. I have found going through the techniques that it's very, very helpful in integrating these techniques into your body, having a conscious awareness and understanding of them. And so really what we need to do is we need to go back to the basics. We need to understand the fundamental structure of this multidimensional universe in which we exist so that we can fully embody and understand as we go through some of these techniques what is happening and why we're doing it. And so in this video series, I am going to start to go through some of the key components of the structure of the anatomy of what we're dealing with here. So first, we're going to talk about Keylontic Science. What is it exactly? This is where science and spirituality merge. The science of consciousness. This is the science of biological, physical, and consciousness of spiritual evolution. This is ascension. So we've always been led to believe that science is separate from spirituality, but Keylontic science actually demonstrates how it's one and the same. It is the science of energy dynamics, how matter forms and consciousness manifests. It is the science of humanity's relationship to source, the structure of the multidimensional time matrix, and our identity. It's the science of DNA activation, the cellular memory coming back online, and the transmutation of form. It is the science of our 12 human senses. We have more than 12, we have more than 5, we have 12. It is a science of light, sound, subconscious symbol codes, and base codes of matter. Everything in reality is standing scalar wave patterns, which makes up our hologram, bending in certain ways, refracting off itself so it can see itself in objectification. And we're going to explain how that works in Keylontic science terms. Nothing is outside of God. The stair-step creation is the way God stepped down to better know itself, and that is what we are. The templates of all living things circulate primal life force currents, the consciousness of God. The planetary scalar shields were twisted to block frequencies we need for cognition, information, and identity. The electromagnetic distortions caused memory loss and block us from the 12 levels of consciousness. And it causes blockages in the DNA templates of all living things, which is creating the distortions in the Merkaba. So having awareness of this also helps us know what it is we're doing and why. We have the partikai, the particum, and the partiké. And these three interweave with each other to create a flashing on and off effect. So the partikai is essentially the birth, the projection of consciousness itself, which splits itself into two, birthing two new energies, particum and partiké. They are polarized creation states. Particum is the divine feminine, the drawing in, magnetic vibration, and the partiké is the antimatter. It is the electric and the pushing out and oscillation. It is the divine masculine. So here is the Holy Trinity of source, divine feminine, and divine masculine. A twist was from what we know of the biblical traditions is the Holy Trinity is God and the Father and the Son, right? Where here we have the truth, divine feminine and divine masculine. So these are electrotonal, the smallest units of energy consciousness in the cosmos, an identity that emanates from the central source called the unici, and they form and sustain morphogenetic fields, the basic energy structure behind its manifest form that allows the form to keep its shape. And groups of particae are basically morphogenetic fields, which we'll get into later. We are made up of these small units of energy consciousness. So the subparticles, which I referred to, the particum and the partiké, are each unique in what they bring. So the particum are kind of slower moving, and they contain half of the electrotonal of its twin. We are primarily made of this material. The partiké is a substance that is pulsing twice as fast with more consciousness. It has like double the consciousness than the particum. It implies, however, that now we have an existence of a parallel self and a parallel earth and a parallel universe, and so on and so forth. There was a parallel to everything because of the particle. Now, the cycling is the action. The particle unit intersects with the 15th dimensional system. It undergoes fission, which breaks apart, replicating itself into the particum and the particle. That flash on and off in both universes. The particle has twice the amount of thrust or force, making the particum spin back into the morphogenetic field, fusing together, releasing a burst of energy. The flashing on and the flashing off is the replication of itself, the fission and fusion. And Asha Nadine explains it like the lights of a marquee that the marquee is not turning, it is stopped, it is still, but the lights flashing around the outer ring make it appear as though it's turning, right? But this is happening in a trillionth, billionth of a second. I mean, we don't have the mathematics on it because science is not there yet, but it is happening so fast that it gives the illusion of movement, right? Everything is happening in the here and in the now, but it is because of this flashing on and off, this fission fusion, that it appears as though things are moving, right? So the particle units that intersect and creating this fission and fusion, this flashing on and off, form together to create the particle grid, which is composed of particle units. And in our system of the particum grid and in the parallel, the particle, right? They group together into complex patterns and they form strands, looks like a fibers of a carpet, like a grid. And this is forming the morphogenetic field. So it's like a carpet of light and sound, which exists behind all matter and forms of consciousness, right? So this is how our reality is manifest because of the particle grid, which forms our morphogenetic field. So the biological spiritual evolution that we're going for is the progression from the lower to higher, pulling higher frequencies, particle grids into our fields by merging our twin from the particle universe into our current existing particum universe self. Merging the consciousnesses, DNA, creates a whole pulse to experience itself beyond matter. So the particle grid forms to become keylons. Now, keylons are dimensionalized particle composite forms that form in and around the particle grid. They form little clusters called keylons, crystalline structures of frozen light. So this is the first step in transition from pure consciousness to pre-matter substance. The keylons create it. They are composed of millions and millions of particle units within the grids. Okay, so this looks like a crystalline structure, like it's microscopic, teeny tiny diamonds clustered around, right? That's what keylons are, forming the pre-matter substance. Then next we have keylon codes, which are the complex groupings of the keylons to further flush out the energy structure from which the particles will manifest in specialized patterns. It is a frequency, an electrotonal frequency formed into interwoven geometrical conscious moving patterns. They are living light and sound patterns. They link the keylons into the pre-matter, where matter and solidity begins to happen. We build complex forms of keylon codes, which is more consciousness brought into our form. The spiritual and biological evolution is when you lessen the density of your matter form by changing from particum to particle. Okay, so the keylon codes are basically complex groupings of the keylons, right? So we all look the same underneath. We all look like this diamond-studded being. We all look the same, right? And so this is called the crystal body. The multidimensional keylon code structure of matter, form, consciousness, and energy. So everything has a crystal body. It is inside of us. It looks like tiny crystals made of light. We all look the same, but with unique and individual geometrical patterns. It sets the manifest characteristics of a form. Its subatomic structure and body rhythms, the way energy and particle units move through the body, and how the type of consciousness awareness of the body will form. It encompasses 12 dimensions of form, forming the DNA, the junk DNA, which is dismantled keylon codes that have been dismantled and need plugging in. Activating chakras builds back keylon codes, thus building back the DNA. So the crystal body, we all look the same underneath it all, right? And we all look like these brilliant microscopic mirrors shining and beaming like diamonds all over ourselves as our consciousness. But we also have our own unique geometrical structure and patterns of sound and light. So this gets into fire letters. Now, these are light symbol codes, electrotonal programs of keylons that make these unique configurations composed of multidimensional light. When you visualize patterns of light in your vision screen, like in your third eye, you're interacting with fourth dimensional sound. So whenever we're looking at a Merkaba symbol or lightning bolts or star, like some of these little symbol codes are essentially helping us with bringing in that frequency. They are symbols that are patterns of sound, essentially. Now, geomancies are fire little letter light symbol control codes, okay? Electrotonal programs of keylon codes used to direct fire letters and keylons through and within the crystal body. They stimulate the activation of frequency through the pineal, optical pineal induction to allow more frequency to open within. They are essentially mathematical data and frequency form that you can pick up on. So those are the more complex codes that we use within the freedom teachings. So essentially, these atoms to molecules to cells, like this is the structure of the basis of our reality and how we come to be and exist in pure consciousness. So the Particai grids form keylons, which are the layers of structured reality. And the keylon looks like a symbol code as a precursor to matter, which is information encrypted, which then forms the morphogenetic field, beginning of your spirit body, consciousness field that holds your template, which is your divine blueprint. Our template is selected before coming into manifestation, before the distortion which becomes distorted over time due to absorbing information in this harmonic universe one. So we come in with distortions that we have to clear. And that's what these activations do. They clear that distortion and they bring back the activation of your DNA. The DNA and the chakras and the morphogenetic field are all interrelated and all connected. They are part and one of the same. And so doing these techniques with the freedom teachings is what is happening is we're turning this online. We're activating fire codes, we're braiding DNA back together, fusing them back because they're not junk and floating about like we're told. And we are healing our morphogenetic field and realigning ourselves for Merkaba healing and correction as well. And so a lot of this stuff will become more familiar with you as you listen to the workshops in the Freedom Teachings workshops that Ashiana Dean and Michael Dean present. I highly recommend you just continue to listen, read, learn, because it will come in, it will settle in. And that's why I started with techniques initially, because I felt that once you do the techniques, you're somehow turning yourself online, and then whenever you deep dive into your studies with the freedom teachings, then things start to just really sink in. You really start to be able to form the bridge with your mental body for this information because your higher self already knows it, but we have distortions in our field that we need to heal in order to bring in that information for our cognition and present, reality awareness. And so it's helpful to do techniques as well. If you feel like you're not really grasping some concepts within the freedom teachings with where you're studying, I would pause, not frustrate yourself. I would go back to just doing some more techniques, singing songs, using Veka codes, doing other techniques of which there are hundreds, and then allow yourself to kind of heal the distortion that is blocking you from that information. And it might be as well that your higher self knows that you're not particularly ready for that bit of information. But hopefully, if we have the basics nailed down, it will start to build on itself. And if you haven't noticed yet, the freedom teachings is really about the structure. And so you have to start in a strategic way for you to really embody and do these activations accordingly so that you don't overwhelm your system with frequency and potentially explode or implode your grid. So the sequence is very, very important. And so these videos, which I will be making now, are going to look at more of the theory behind a lot of these basic fundamental components of which we need to be aware of in order to properly integrate some of these teachings and also to, have a stronger impact with the activations that we're doing. So I look forward to the next video, and I'll see you there. Stop.